There's one thing that your career, income, romantic partners, friends, lifestyle, and even health mostly hinge upon. Do you know what that is? Can you guess what that might be? It is your self concept, your idea of yourself, or your ego. Hey guys, welcome to Lion's Heart. And in this video, I'm going to be speaking about the ego and what that really means, and help you to better understand what your ego is, and at the same time, how to not villainize or demonize the ego, but get free of the parts of the ego that might be causing pain, suffering, holding you back, and causing dysfunction. I just want to start with the concept and the sharing of thinking of the ego as a symbol, right? The ego represents the one in here, the one inside this body, right? And it's a tool. It's a tool which we can use to navigate social situations, which we can use as a reference socially, so that we know when someone is looking at this bubble of awareness over here, that there's a human being in there, and if they're saying you or they're saying your name, they're referring to that human being. So that is what the ego is, right? So if we look at it from this stance, this angle, we can see that the ego is simply a tool. Like the hand is a tool, like the eyes are a tool. The ego is also a tool. And it hit me like a ton of bricks the other day when I realized that the issue with the ego is not that it's there, right? It's not that it exists, because a lot of spiritual texts, it's a myth within spirituality that the source of all suffering and every problem and the reason we're not enlightened is because of the ego. The ego, the ego, the ego. The ego is evil. The ego is the bad guy. What does this create? This creates an inner war. This creates an inner conflict between you and yourself, fighting yourself. Like, you are the ego partially. So when you have this inner war, this spiritual inner war, it creates a lot of friction and tension, and that really is not how the spiritual path is meant to be enjoyed or flow or feel good. Like, it doesn't feel good to have this inner war. And so the key, here it is. Here's the key. The key is that you are not exclusively the ego. So the ego is there. Most people are identified with it as them. And the key is not that it needs to be gone, not that your sense of self as a human being needs to be gone, but to realize that it is not exclusively and solely and only who and what you are, right? So this takes a lot of work and patience and time to realize and to start to create that space between who you are and your ego and that exclusivity, right? You have to look at it as a very almost tedious and difficult process, like as if you were learning to code or as if you were trying to master martial arts or learn something very complex and new, right? It would take daily practice. It would take a lot of patience. It would take a dedication to freedom. And you're not going to really just get this from a big psychedelic trip or a weekend retreat. The true freedom really comes in that daily work. It sounds boring, but it's like, standing in the grocery line, watching your thoughts, creating space, asking who am I in every situation, who's witnessing this, who's experiencing this. These practices over time will build the greatest freedom. It doesn't happen in one peak thrusted experience. Unfortunately, I wish it did, but there's a reason the masters are the masters, and there's a reason they're few and far between, is because this takes hard work, discipline, and extreme patience. But it is possible to become completely free of the ego. And when it starts to happen, it's amazing. It's like these little bubbles start to pop, like, oh, I don't have to think that I'm that person, or I don't have to react that way, or I don't have to, I'm none of this. I'm literally nothing, right? That's what enlightenment is. It's realizing that you're nothing. You're awareness, but you're none of it. You're none of the reactions and thoughts and these things. So getting to that state sober naturally, your day-to-day state is going to take a lot of work, because if you look around, most people are not in that state, and they're very attached to their self-concepts and their ideas of who and what they are. And most of them think that they're their reactions. So how do we begin to unwire this knot, right? How do we begin to start the process of disidentification with these reactions and self-concepts and thoughts? And one key thing to do is to realize that you're doing it, right? Realize that one reaction, let's say, what's something that makes you angry, right? Let's say someone bumps into you in the grocery store, right? And your reaction is anger. So the anger comes up, and you can realize that this is something that you're creating. So the first thing is to own it. It's not anger coming from outside of you. It's not anger that you have no control over. You're literally doing that angry reaction, right? So you feel the anger, you see it come up, and you say, hey, I'm doing this. Let me own it fully. And then you fully let the anger in like a sponge. You just let it absorb and soak into you. And you watch it. You create that space. You don't let it take you away, like go into the stories of, oh, fuck that guy and blah, blah, blah. You just allow the feeling. You almost like open up like the sky, right? And this is this cloud of anger that's moving through the sky. You just allow it to soak into you and realize that you're creating it and you're doing it, and own it. Like, I am being this anger right now. I am creating this anger. The second stage, and this is key, is to realize that you're identified with it. So you're thinking that anger, that angry reaction, that person who's angry is literally and exclusively, that is you. That is who you are. And the rest does the rest of the work is done for you, because the awareness in itself is the medicine. The awareness in itself is what will begin to unwire the knots. So you don't even have to do anything after this point. And really, all you have to do is recognize that you're doing it, and then be aware that you're identified with it. And just keep doing this over and over. And the mind is going to get lost. The mind's going to go into stories. The mind's going to go into fuck this reactions and blah, blah, blah. And these also aren't you. You have to realize, like, these also can be let go. And slowly, like a Jenga pile, you'll begin to just pull these little bricks out from under your psyche, and the whole layered system will begin to collapse. The ego will begin to collapse, and there will be a profound sense of freedom and joy, knowing that you are not the reactions that you're creating. You're not a slave to them, and you don't have to follow them or listen to them. And this is the essence of enlightenment. This is the essence of meditation. And if you just do this process, you will slowly begin to feel freedom. But the trick is to stick with it. Thanks so much, guys. This was a really quick episode, but if you really understand this principle and this explanation, it can do profound wonders in your life. And to just remember in every moment, catch yourself creating it, and then catch yourself identifying with it. And just notice, just give it space, let it be, and just notice. And you'll see your life drastically change. Much love, guys. Talk to you soon. Cheers.